Shalom Aleichem. This week's Parsha is Devarim. It's always known as Shabbos Chazon because the Haftorah starts off Chazon Yeshayahu. So this Shabbos, one of Tisha B'Av, is always called Shabbos Chazon. And it always comes out the Parsha of Devarim. As we mentioned earlier, Reb Nosson says that why do we have these three parshas between Shavuos, B'Tammuz, and Tisha B'Av? The main reason is because all these parshas, and especially this parsha, speaks about going up to conquer Eretz Yisrael. That though we might be driven from it because of sin, right? But we will be returned to the land. We will be. And Baruch Hashem, it's happening today. Baruch Hashem. There's a lot of things happening. Eretz Yisrael is growing and growing. As I may have mentioned, 60 years ago I was here in Eretz Yisrael as a bocher, as a single young man, 17, not quite 17. And I visited the land, and it was very constricted. 3 years afterwards, 5 years afterwards, they had the 6-Day War. And all of a sudden, the whole land opened up. And it's been that way since, Baruch Hashem, and it's happening more and more that we see how Hashem is returning the Jews to Eretz Yisrael. So that's one of the things that gives us strength in faith, that we'll be able to master all the difficulties that we have. And Be'ezah Hashem, we will live to see Moshiach coming. B'meida b'yameinu, Amen.
Amen.
Parsha starts off, Eila hadvorim asher diber Moshe. These are the words that Moshe spoke. And what did he say? He gave a rebuke. The whole first sentence is rebuke to the Jewish nation. So Rashi explains, well, if some of these things happened 40 years previously, they were 40 years in the desert, why did he wait till now? He says that one of the reasons is you don't rebuke your children or your friends too often. Don't do it. Be silent, be quiet. Right? Why? Because if you rebuke them once, you're going to rebuke them twice, and 3 times, and 10 times, and 30 times, and 1,000 times, right? And they're not going to listen. Simple as that. When you rebuke people, you have to know how to do it. Rabbi Nachman puts it in his perspective. He says, a person did a rotten thing. It's a sin, it was a terrible thing, whatever it was. Well, take a rotten fish, take a fish, and leave it for a day or so, it becomes rotten, and it stinks. Really smells bad, right? After a while, the smell goes away. It just dies out. But if you go over to that rotten fish and you hit it a little bit, the smell is going to revive. And you're going to hear that smell again. Rabbi Nachman explains you rebuke a person too often if you don't do it right. If you do it in a manner that's degrading, then what happens is the person gets turned off, and the rotten smell of what he did comes to the fore, and you'll never get over it. So if you learn to rebuke properly, with a nice voice, a nice statement, you say it in a way that it's bearable to the person, more than bearable. It actually brings up the person realizes that they did something wrong, and I want to correct it, then you did a great thing, right? And he brings a proof from the Gemara. The Gemara says that the Jews were standing at Sinai and they made a golden calf. You just saw Hashem. You just witnessed Hashem coming down to Mount Sinai, and he brought you the Torah. He said, keep the Torah, observe the Torah. And what did you do? You made a golden calf, an idol. The Torah says, don't do that, right? You should not have idols. So in Shir Hashirim, there's an interesting pasuk. It says, Nirdi Notan Recho. My mir, my spices emitted a nice smell. A nice smell. Why was that? Because when Moshe Rabbeinu rebuked the Jews for the golden calf at the time, he said it in such a way that they all realized they did wrong and they wanted to do tshuva. That's a very important point. It says nosan. It doesn't say hisriach, the Gemara explains. It says he gave forth a good odor, not that a smelly odor. Not something that was malodorous. Okay? So that's the idea of rebuke. That's how the Parsha starts off. And it's something that we need for this week because it's Tisha B'Av. Tisha B'Av is the week of the Churban. Why was the Beis HaMikdash destroyed? Because of sin. Right? Now it's interesting. The Gemara in Yuma says the first Beis HaMikdash was destroyed because they had 3 capital sins: idolatry, adultery, and murder. The second temple, they were tzaddikim, righteous people. Why was it destroyed? Because they had sinas chinam. They had a hatred that was uncalled for. Everyone was fighting with each other. The jealousies, the evil eye, whatever it was that they went against each other, right? That was the cause of the second Beis HaMikdash. And then the Gemara says, which one is worse? 3 capital sins: idolatry, adultery, and murder. And this, they were tzaddikim, but they hated each other. He says, well, take a look. The first temple was destroyed. It was rebuilt after 70 years. This temple was destroyed. We're still waiting for it to be rebuilt. Right? So which one is worse? You answer the question. You know the answer. You know the answer because people commit the worst sins, but if you can speak to them, you can rebuke them, and you could get across to them that this is not the way to live. Okay, right? Go speak to the, what was his name? Lucky Luciano, the mafia head. Right? Go speak to him, tell him murder is not the way to live. Would he accept you? Right? Would he do that? Of course not. Right? Or Giovanni, or whatever the names of the leading mafia. Go speak to Hitler, or to Stalin, or to Genghis Khan, and explain to them that murder is not the way you deal with people. They won't accept it from you. They won't accept it. So the idea is that we have to learn to rebuke, and to rebuke right, and not to hate our fellow. Not to hate. Bring out the best of them. Bring out the good. Judge them favorably. Look for something good. Always. That's one of Rabbi Nachman's major lessons. Always look for the good in people. You look for the good, you'll find the good, you'll be able to live with the good. If you're going to look for bad, for jealousy, for something wrong, whatever, so your mind is focused on wrong. Your mind is focused on, that's where your mindset is, right? Is that the way you want to live? With hatred? No, you have to learn to live with love. So that's one of the major lessons of this week's Parsha. Rebuke. Yeah, you see somebody doing something wrong, try and help them. But do it in a way that's beneficial, not in a way where the person's just going to resent it and do something else. Okay, the next thing the Parsha speaks about is Moshe Rabbeinu gave the rebuke when? When did he do it? It says, Acharei hakoso es Sichon melech Cheshbon v'oig melech HaBashan. After he conquered Sichon and Og, that's when he rebuked him. Rashi explains why. Because if you think of it, Moshe Rabbeinu is now about to pass away, and he's going to rebuke them. Big deal. He's leaving us. He's leaving us behind. So he tells you, you rotten guys, you terrible guys, look what you did during your life, right? What's the sense of that, right? They look at him as like a father, a dying father on a bed. He tells all his kids, you were rotten, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, right? No, he said, Acharei hakoso. After he conquered Sichon and Og, and he showed them that the land is theirs, because he conquered, he did something for them, right now, that's when he gave them the rebuke. He didn't do it after nothing. He did his good things, he did his good deeds, and he was ending his life on a very good note, right? And then he said, now I can rebuke you, because you'll at least respect, you know that I did something good for you, right? It's also an important thing, right? The Gemara says, Vayihi b'mei shvot hashoftim, in the book of Ruth, it starts off, it was in the days of the Shvot HaShoftim. Excuse me. When the judges ruled. So why does it say Shvot HaShoftim? The judgment of the judges? It's enough to say the days of the judges. Why? It says, the Gemara answers, because in that generation, everyone judged the judges. Right? Like I understand this year there was a decision in the Supreme Court in the United States about Roe versus Wade, about the abortion and whatnot. So now everybody is angry at the Supreme Court. They're judging the judges whether they did right or not. They didn't judge when they permitted abortion 40 years ago, but they judge them now because it's against the will of the people. If we judge wrong, a judge could judge wrong. It's possible they can make a mistake. 9 judges, not as common, because they all agreed, whatever the final count was, the majority ruled. But it's not the question of that. It's a question of judging the judges. I'm offering my opinion. Am I a judge? Can I judge? Can I say things like that? Can I rebuke that way? No. So it's something that I have to learn to keep my mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut and learn to do it in a way that it's beneficial, not that it causes strife and argument among the people. So anyway, after this, it says that people came to him for judgments, and he said, I can't judge all of you. can't. What do you mean he can't? He did. Before he appointed judges, he was the judge, and he was the one who did it. What then? He says, everyone has something to say. Everyone has something to say. And everyone's going to say it. And there's no way you're going to hold the people back from saying what they're saying. So let me set up a system of judges where you can go to them and say what you have to say, appeals, right? And then you can finally get to a court of appeals or to the high court, the Supreme Court. The main thing is you have to know that the judge has to be someone who's not afraid of anybody, right? The judge is not afraid of anybody. He will issue his judgment no matter how much he's threatened. Lo sakiru ponim b'mishpat. Do not recognize anyone. You got a very powerful guy come before you and a weak, regular, common citizen, right? This very powerful guy. I gotta respect him. Or I have to fear him, right? Then you can't be a judge. You can't. You have to be able to rule according to the law. You have to be able to know what the law is and fulfill the law and extend the law so that it applies to everybody. And now this guy gets special treatment, this guy gets favorable treatment. No, it can't be. Moshe Rabbeinu had to look for judges that would fit that bill. All right, that's the next part. The next part of the Parshat speaks about sending the spies into Israel. Right. Moshe Rabbeinu sent the spies in, and the pasuk there says, Aluza, go up, as haderech nelech bo. We'll see the road that you go on. You'll learn which road we can go on, okay? Rashi explains an amazing thing, very amazing. He says there isn't a road that doesn't have curves in it, right? No road is extremely straight that you can just go straight. Every road has its turns. And he's talking about life. Life has its quirks. Life is not straight. Life will never be straight. Life has many things that come to us, many things that upset us, many things that turn us around, many things that could knock us off course. That's the path of life, right? It has its curves. It has its set of curves, and we have to learn to navigate. We have to learn to navigate what goes across in the road. What comes across in my life, I have to learn to accept it. I have to learn to live with it, and I have to learn to adjust to it, and I have to learn to overcome it. That's the important thing in life. Right? There is no road, there is no life that doesn't have its quirks and its problems, right? And it's going to happen. And it's going to happen. It has to happen. Now the question is, why does it have to happen? Why can't life be smooth? Because if it's not smooth, there's no room for growth. There's no room for growth. Growth happens when you're challenged, and you use your wits, use your consciousness, like Adalia spoke about this morning, right? You're aware of what's happening. Now, what does this mean to me? How can I accept this challenge and do what I have to do in order to be able to go forward in life, right? Now, take a high school kid. right? He graduates high school. He's got to go out, earn a living. Whether he'll go to college and learn a business or a trade, whatever it may be, he's going to get married, and they're going to have children, and they're going to have to raise those children. And here's where many of the challenges in life come. In earning a living, and in marriage, and raising children. It's just a challenge after challenge after challenge. A friend of mine, I had made some shidduchim. I had married off some of my kids. And a friend of mine was marrying off his first. And he asked me, what do I look for? I said, frankly, I don't know. I don't know. But what you look for in a son or a son-in-law, a daughter-in-law, a son-in-law, you look for someone who's kind. That's what I think. Because kindness will always win out. If you have other kind of toughness, you never know when that toughness will develop to being too tough. But I said, don't even count on it anyway. And they get married, and it'll look okay. He says, but you gotta wait about 5 years before you can relax. He says, why? He said, because they get married, they'll probably have a kid within a couple of years, maybe 2 kids. And, well, children have a tendency to keep the parents in a hospital one night. Children have a tendency to fight among themselves. Children have a tendency to get themselves into trouble and whatnot. If you pass 5 years and the couple is still getting along well, then probably they'll get along the rest of their life too. You never know. You never know. But that's what I told them. That's what I suggested. Baruch Hashem. Whatever the case is, right, we have to know that every path has its curves. And every path has something that we have to learn to overcome. Further on in the Parsha, it talks about Moshe conquering Sichon and Og. He talks about how they had to bypass the land of Moab and Edom and Ammon in order to get to where they entered the land. They were in the Sinai desert. They should have been able to go northward, but because they were sentenced to be 40 years in the desert, excuse me, so they had to take the long road around. So they went south of the land of Esav, south of the land of Moab, and then they went northwards, north of the land of Ammon, and then they came to the land of Sichon and Og. And the Torah describes it in detail. And then the Torah says they came to the area near Mount Hermon. Mount Hermon is a famous mountain in Israel. But interestingly, the Pasuk says it has 4 names. Sion, Hermon, Sion, Hermon, Sneer. It has 4 names. Why? Why did it have 4 names? Because the land was so beautiful, so attractive, that kings from different countries came and laid stake to property in the land of Israel. And they wanted to take over this land. Each one took part of the Hermon mountain range, and they called it Hermon or Sneer or whatever they called it. They called it on their own names to be a remembrance that this is their land. It belongs to them because they wanted a part of the land. When we go back in history, we take a look. The land, the Gemara says it's called Eretz Yisrael, the Gemara Ksuvos. And it's called that way because it's a land that is loyal to its owners. The land is loyal to its owners. Should the owners leave, the land will be more or less fallow. It won't produce. So the Gemara there in Ksuvas describes the bounty that was in Eretz Israel. It describes cabbage, it describes wheat of being incredible proportions, just incredible crops and incredible proportions. And then the land, Jews were kicked out, so the land became non-productive. Just produced a little bit to support the people that lived there, but it wasn't the production that was there beforehand. In our day, starting when the Jews began returning to Eretz Israel in the 1850s, in the 1900s, and now, especially now, the produce of the land of Israel is incredible. It's shipped all over the world, it's exported, and everybody loves Israeli produce. Why? Where was all this produce 100 years ago, 300 years ago, 1,000 years ago? Where was it? What happened to it? Right? The land is loyal to its owners. It will produce great fruits when it's tilled by the Jews. The Jews are the owner of the land of Israel. The Arabs who lived here were able to eke out fruits and vegetables. Nothing substantial, nothing very good. Even today, take a look at the produce of the Jewish people, Jewish farmers in Israel, and take a look at the produce of the Arab farmers in Israel. And there's a world of difference between the products, world of difference. Why is that? Because the land is loyal to its owners. We as Jews live here now. The land has begun producing its fruit the way it was in the time of the temple. And in Yitzhak Hashem, we're going to see even more and better. And as you can see, Israel is a leader in world agriculture, right? You can see that. But this is because the land is loyal to its owners, right? We'll conclude with the story of Sichon and Og. Sichon and Og were giants. Each one was an incredibly strong leader, powerful leader. And they weren't afraid of anybody. They weren't afraid of anybody. The Jews came, 600,000 strong, and they were not afraid. They lived in their lands on the east bank of the Jordan River. And they were there because all the kings of the surrounding areas paid them homage that they should protect them, because they were considered worthy of protecting everybody. It was like a mafia. You know, they paid protection money to guard over the land. And the Jews came. They asked to be let pass so we can go to the land of Israel. They said, no. We're here to make sure you don't get across the land. Okay. So Moshe did battle first with Sichon, right? And the Gemara says like this, Rashi brings it in the Parshat. If Sichon was a king in any city, right, it would be very, very difficult. He was very powerful, a very powerful leader, and he led his men, and they never lost a war. Sichon lived in the city of Heshbon, which is a very powerful, protected city, a fortress city. He said, if you had Sichon alone or Heshbon alone, you could never conquer them. Never. If you had Heshbon city with Sichon in it, it's impossible for you to even think that you'll conquer it. And yet, the Jews came, it was their right, and the rite of passage. They went through and they conquered Sichon. Og was the same type of person. But Og had a different problem for the Jews. He faced the Jews. He was a big problem. Way back, some 450 years before that, Og was the messenger who told Avraham Avinu, our patriarch Abraham, that Lot was captured in battle. He was the one that came to tell Avraham, so he had a merit that he informed Avraham in order to rescue his nephew Lot. That's in Genesis 14, right? Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid of the merit that he had that helped Avraham Avinu. Now figure this out. It's some 450 years later, right? 450 years later. He did one merit. He helped Avraham. And Moshe Rabbeinu was afraid of him because of that merit. Now think merit of somebody who does good, who wants to do good, and he has intentions to do good his whole life, right? How great could that merit be? Og did one thing, and actually the Gemara says Og had evil intentions. He wanted Avram to die, to be killed in battle, so that Sarah he could marry, right? So he didn't even have good intentions when he did the merit. And yet he did a merit, and it lasted for so many years. So many years. We have to learn from that what it means to do something good, something nice, something meritorious, right? If the temple was destroyed for unwarranted hatred, how much should we build a temple with unwarranted love? How much should we give of ourselves to help others? Rebuke them, but gently. Rebuke them nicely. How much we should look to give merit to anyone and everyone who we can. Bring them to the side of merit. And just think how long, excuse me, I didn't sleep much last night. Just think how long this merit of a good deed lasts. If Og, with evil intentions, did a good deed and he was spared 450 years, imagine the merit of every one of us. Comes Shabbos, it's Tisha B'Av, comes after Shabbos, we observe Tisha B'Av, we mourn, we cry, we ask Hashem to build a temple. All this is good. All these are good deeds. It's a hard day, yes, no question about it. But it's a day that brings us tremendous merit, hopefully enough merit that will merit to see building of the temple, the ingathering of the exiles, and the coming of Mashiach. Amen.
Amen.